Justin, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us to talk about prison chaplaincy and how we think about the best kind of training and preparation for people who are going to provide spiritual care in incarceration settings. Tell us, what's your context? Where are you coming from?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here, Katie. I'm Justin von Bujdoss. I'm the Executive Director for Chaplaincy and Staff Wellness for New York City Department of Correction. I was hired as the first chaplain for staff for the department, and I supervise all of the chaplains that work with people in custody and our staff wellness initiatives. Most of our facilities are on Rikers Island, and we have some around the city. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Well, first and most important question is, what do you think are the top of mind, most important things when you think about the candidates coming to you to be hired, and just the kind of colleagues that you and your colleagues are seeking to add to the landscape of spiritual care providers in incarceration settings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So there are a couple dynamics that are really unique to correctional chaplaincy. And I think what we could say the primary one is the fact that the right to have access to religious services is ultimately a First Amendment right. So for people who are interested in getting into chaplaincy in correctional settings, I think that difference, makes kind of all the world of difference, actually. Mm-hmm. If you're Catholic or Protestant or whatever faith tradition you come from, there's a lot more room for liturgical work, which I think is, especially for folks in div school, I've experienced pretty exciting, because you can move into your own kind of intersection of your own faith and somebody as a conduit of ritual to be able to bring support for folks. I think right now in the United States, criminal justice reform is such a hot topic, and I think that aspects of the restorative process, restorative justice, restorative circle process is really important, and maybe exploring what it means to get out of a binary good and evil, right and wrong kind of modality with respect to the people you're serving if you're working with people in custody. And then I think similarly, what we're also seeing, I think on a national level, is this recognition of the stressors that law enforcement professionals go through. And so in this particular case, that would be correctional staff. And so awareness of trauma, what does it mean for somebody now who's training as a chaplain or a chaplain educator or a div school professor to start looking at trauma-informed spiritual practice, trauma-informed spiritual response, things like that. How can we provide education for people around addressing the complexity of what it means to be human in all sorts of institutional settings? So within correctional settings, I think it's easy for people to see people in custody in a down power position, and therefore want to make the special effort in providing spiritual care for people in custody. And I think that's great, and obviously really important. And then, there's the recognition of the humanity of correctional staff, of non-uniform correctional staff. I used to work in hospice prior to this, and when I did that, and I do this also for folks in our system, non-uniform people who are processing information, in this case, around violent events. So, assaults on staff, assaults, between people in custody. That's really traumatic, and that gets heavy. So, the question is, I guess, how to be able to look in a non-judgmental way at everybody in the system, how to see what best practices, what best spiritual practices, spiritual narratives one can employ to be able to look at how to kind of break the that initial judgment that one might have, or preferencing one population over another. And so I think it also is really applicable to hospital settings as well.
So one piece, so many chaplaincy contexts, a major dynamic is a pluralistic context, multi-faith. And for you, where you are, could you just say a little bit about your tradition and then how it works amidst many correctional facilities in terms of having many different chaplains represented?
And I remember meeting with some folks shortly after I was hired, and they asked, like, why did they pick you? Like you don't, you're not Protestant like me, or you're not Catholic like me, or Jewish like me, or Muslim like me. And I was, quick to give some answer, which I don't remember. But what ended up happening was, I use, I guess you could say, the ethical imperative that arises within the Buddhist tradition as the way I externalize my faith. Right? So the way I externalize my faith in my work is to be able to try to be present to alleviate the suffering of those around me. And so as a chaplain, that means, bending to the needs of people of different faiths. It means connecting people specifically to chaplains or outside clergy of different faiths, where I can't provide, the reasonable support. And interestingly enough, after, about 6 months, a couple of these same folks came back and said, oh, it makes sense that they picked you for who you are, because you're not trying to proselytize. You're not trying to, you're basically trying to let us be who we are. And I think that that's the key, I think, for me in chaplaincy, no matter where I offer it. And in especially a place like New York City, where there is such diversity with respect to faith traditions that you'll find in the community and also in our facilities, it's important to have a recognition of, I like to call it the rich and diverse fabric of faith in New York City.
So, Justin, and thinking about, there's so much to talk about when it comes to correctional facilities, but if you had to sort of name, in summary, what are the most important things for educators to be thinking about when they're thinking about, does my program help train students for correctional facility chaplaincy?
This is another one of these incredible questions. Thank you, Katie. So I think that the big piece is looking at how whatever educational training one is offering can be rooted in an ethos of a really honest critical analysis of what's needed in not only in any given culture within which one lives, but with respect to how people are treated, systems of power, systems of abuse, the exploration around trauma and the impact of trauma is really important. And then creativity. I think that, while obviously correctional settings are security-based, and so things have to follow a particular order, if you can foster, I guess, ways of looking at ministry that are creative, that look at things freshly, then I think not only will you be able to create the conditions for chaplains to arise that are able to address people's spiritual care needs, but also help transform culture. And I think that's kind of, a key piece. What does it mean to transform culture within these correctional settings? And then also how people view people who have been incarcerated as well. And those who are incarcerated, how can they view themselves as empowered, supported, valued members of society.
Great. Justin, thank you not only for your work in the world, but thank you for this time today and for giving us this perspective on training for correctional facility chaplains. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, thank you so much.